The Flame Reforged. Outskirts of the demon fort of Draceryos, 187 AD 85 AC. The Hill of the Dragon loomed like a dark crown upon the lands of the long summer, a place shrouded in whispers and dread. Where once Balthagar Draceryos had performed his ritual, the skies darkened, thunder cracked without storm, and an unholy screech rent the air. Now stood the forge, a monument to rebirth and power. The hill had been encircled by high walls of dragonstone, watchtowers rising like sentinels, their gaze unyielding. The reinforced gate faced the demon fort of Draceryos, while the far side of the hill remained open to the skies, an expanse for Azantius and other dragons to land, and for the world to fear what they might birth. Beneath the hill, the ley lines pulsed, currents of ancient, volatile magic Balthagar had discovered upon returning from the Battle of the Blood Tide, the name the Valyrian sailors had given to his victory over the Ironborn, their ships set aflame, their dead set adrift in a grotesque warning. The air here was thick with arcane tension, the ground itself thrumming like a heartbeat. To contain the surging magic from the previous ritual, Balthagar had driven dragonstone tablets etched with Sith runes deep into the earth, anchoring the hill in a web of power. At the summit, the forge awaited, an anvil of Valyrian steel, faint crimson cracks webbing its surface, a hammer forged of the same, gifted by Lord Embarion and enhanced by Balthagar's own hands with Sith runes of stability. Even so, the metal strained, barely containing the dark force that surged within. Azantius perched nearby, a mountain of muscle and molten scale, his dark red body gleaming with a metallic sheen, horns like blackened iron, wings folded tight yet radiating latent fury. His eyes, pools of molten magma, watched with an intensity that seemed to sear the very air. Only four stood with Balthagar atop the hill: the Grand Master of the Blood Dragon Order, the Grand Mistress of the Fire Dragon Order, the Grand Mistress of the Order of Shadows, and Lord Embarion himself. They watched in tense silence, not daring to interrupt, for they knew not the ways of Sith sorcery nor the forging of such power. They were here only to witness. Balthagar began. His hands, bare, scarless, unshaken, lifted Stormbringer, the ancient blade of House Draceryos. He laid it upon the anvil and began to chant. The words poured from him in the guttural, harsh syllables of the ancient Sith tongue, an alien sound that seemed to twist the air itself. The dark mistresses flinched, their eyes narrowing in alarm. Even the Grand Master of the Blood Dragon, steeped in the oldest tongues, had never heard such words. Blood dripped onto the blade, Balthagar's own, mingled with that of Vassarion, the great dragon of Aurion. Dust from Vassarion's bones scattered across the anvil, hissing into the forge's flames. Azantius exhaled, an inferno of molten breath that engulfed the blade, flames crackling with dark energy. The forging was more than physical, it was a ritual, a binding of essence and will. Sith runes seared into the steel, glowing like fresh magma. The edges of the blade shimmered a deep, crimson red, as if flame itself lived within. A ruby, cut from the heart of a mountain and pulsing with caged power, was set into the pommel, encased by delicate veins of Valyrian steel, like a dragon's claws grasping a heart. The hilt was wrapped in dark dragonbone, crimson veins pulsing faintly within, the crossguards shaped into snarling dragon maws. The scabbard, forged of great dragonbone and Valyrian steel, was etched with runes designed to contain the blade's might. Its fit was perfect, the sound of sheathing smooth as a whisper. Stormbringer was reborn, a blade that could only be wielded by one of Draceryos' blood, and only by one worthy. It enhanced its wielder's strength, sharpened their senses, increased proficiency with the blade, and amplified the force within them, especially the combat techniques using the force, such as Vapad Form 7. It healed wounds by drawing blood, each deep cut feeding its master's vitality. It could levitate, find its master across great distances, and answered only to its bonded wielder. It was a blade of death and dominion. The blood ring followed. Black steel and dark bone twisted together, the Sith runes glowing faintly in a lattice that seemed alive. Balthagar imbued it with his blood, the blood of a great dragon, and the essence of Sith sorcery. It granted heightened resistance to poison and disease, sharpened senses to an almost supernatural level, and bolstered the user's force abilities, particularly the dark side. It healed minor wounds over time and enhanced instinct and reflex, granting a near sixth sense of awareness. The armor came last, plates of Valyrian steel, dark as a starless night, etched with Sith runes that pulsed in time with Balthagar's heartbeat. It was fused with Balthagar's blood, Vassarion's, and the dust of dragonbone. The plates were perfectly interlocked, allowing seamless movement. The helm, shaped like a snarling dragon, radiated dread. The armor enhanced physical abilities, speed, strength, reflexes, and endurance, healing grievous wounds in battle, invigorating its wearer with arcane force. When the last rune flared and dimmed, Balthagar stood at the forge's heart, in the now reforged armor, the ring on his right hand's tall finger, Stormbringer unsheathed, in the grasp of his right hand. Balthagar is radiating power like a storm barely contained. The air shimmered, the earth itself seemed to hum beneath his boots. The mages and Lord Embarian stepped back instinctively, faces pale, sweat beading their brows. The aura he exuded was overwhelming, raw, pulsing, like standing before one of the 14 flames in mortal flesh. Azantius' voice rumbled in his mind, deep and reverent. You are no longer merely mortal, my rider. You are becoming something more. Balthagar's eyes burned with cold certainty. As it must be. Then, a sudden flash, vision seared into his mind. 3 dragons, Vermithor, Caraxes, Vagar. Their riders, Jaehaerys, Emon, Balon. Wings beating against the skies, arrogance burning in their hearts. They came with purpose, but not understanding. Azantius confirmed it, his mind entwining with Balthagar's. They approached. The dark mistress, watching with narrowed eyes, whispered, Dragon dreams. I saw them in Vamer's time, though never so strong. The blood remembers. Balthagar's voice was low, firm. They are coming. And I will meet them. Without hesitation, he leapt onto Azantius' back, his movements fluid despite the weight of his armor. The connection between rider and dragon pulsed like a second heartbeat. He gripped the saddle, whispering to his mount. Let us deal with these fools. Azantius roared, a sound that split the air, a promise of doom, and leapt skyward, wings unfurling like a storm. East of Volantis. The skies darkened as 3 dragons soared above the lands between Volantis and the lands of the long summer, clouds swirling unnaturally, tendrils of mist rising from the earth as if the land itself recoiled. King Jaehaerys sat rigid atop Vermithor, his jaw tight, unease shadowing his features. Balon on Vagar shifted, gripping the reins with white-knuckled hands, while Emon upon Caraxes glared into the swirling fog, his heart pounding. Balon's voice cut through the growing tension. This fog, it is not natural. A deep, shuddering roar shattered the air, a sound so vast, so primal, it seemed the very bones of the world trembled. Vermithor faltered in flight, wings shaking. Caraxes snarled in confusion, his head whipping side to side. But Vagar whimpered, a low, broken sound, her body twisting in the air. She turned, ignoring Balon's frantic commands, and fled, her roars tinged with panic. Balon shouted in disbelief, Vagar. Obey me. But the old dragon fled, leaving Balon reeling, the blood draining from his face. Then they saw it. Azantius tore through the clouds, a titan wreathed in molten power. His wings blotted out the sun, scales gleaming dark red and black, horns like jagged blades. His roar was a sound of annihilation, his presence alone a declaration of dominance. Upon his back, a figure, Balthagar Draceryos, stood, dark armor gleaming, Stormbringer at his side, the blood ring pulsing faintly. The aura around him was palpable, oppressive, as if the very air bent to his will. Azantius struck. He lunged at Vagar, pinning her against a cliffside, his massive claws locking her down in an instant. Balon screamed, but Vagar whimpered beneath the crushing weight, broken and cowering. Caraxes turned to aid, but Azantius twisted with terrifying speed, his jaws snapping shut around the red worm's neck, slamming him into the side of a hill. Emon cursed, trying to steady Caraxes, but the dragon's struggles weakened. Jaehaerys, pale, desperate, tried to rise higher on Vermithor, but a weight settled on his shoulder. Balthagar stood upon Vermithor's back, impossibly balanced, the tip of Stormbringer resting against the king's shoulder, a dark smile playing across his lips. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the roar of the wind and the labored breaths of dragons. Carefully consider your next move. I suggest you land. Jaehaerys froze. The power radiating from Balthagar was suffocating, his voice like a blade pressed to the throat of the world. A slow dread crept into the king's veins, a cold realization that he faced not just a man, but a force of nature. His voice trembled, a whisper against the storm. Who are you? Balthagar's gaze burned, his words a dark promise that echoed in the king's soul. I am the shadow that commands the flames. I am the will that binds the storms. I am Balthagar Draceryos, and all shall bend. 6 comments 0 vote. The reckoning of the great dragon. The skies above the lands of the long summer seemed to hold their breath. The clouds, dark and heavy, swirled with an unnatural stillness as Azantius hovered in their midst, a leviathan of flame and scale. His wings spanned wide, casting a shadow over the Targaryens below, a shadow that seemed to stretch into their very souls. The heat radiating from him was oppressive, like standing before the mouth of a volcano, Yet it was the figure upon his back that drew every gaze, every breath. Balthagar Draceryos stood, balanced atop Azantius as though gravity itself had bent to his will. Stormbringer rested at his side, its crimson-etched edges glowing faintly against the gathering dusk. The blood ring pulsed upon his finger, and the dark Valyrian steel of his armor seemed to drink in the fading light, runes glowing like embers along its surface. He was no longer merely a man, he was something else, something more. A force of nature, a being reborn in flame and shadow. King Jaehaerys Targaryen, astride Vermithor, felt it in his bones, the ancient, primal fear that no armor, no dragon, no bloodline could shield him from. He stared up at Balthagar, his grip on the reins white-knuckled, his breath caught in his throat. Emon and Balon flanked him, their dragons, Caraxes and Vagar, pinned beneath Azantius' might, their roars stifled, their bodies trembling in submission. Balthagar's voice cut through the charged air, deep and resonant, each word precise as a blade. You trespass upon the lands of Valyria, the lands of my blood. You ride upon dragons, yet you do so as exiles, kin of Aenar the exile, not as rightful lords. You have broken the ancient laws of Valyria. You have shown arrogance, and ignorance. His gaze swept over them, cold and merciless. The Valyrian freehold may have perished in flame, but I, its heir, live. And the blood of Valyria, my people, my kin, thrives. Every day we grow stronger. Every day, the world will remember what was lost, and what shall rise again. The weight of his words hung in the air like a drawn sword. Azantius' growl rumbled beneath Balthagar's feet, a deep, earth-shaking vibration that set the Targaryen dragons trembling anew. Vagar whimpered, her body pressed into the earth, tail coiled tightly in submission. Caraxes thrashed weakly, but the might of Azantius' clawed grip kept him pinned, as easily as a child holds a sparrow. Balon's face twisted in rage, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. Emon clenched his teeth, looking from Balthagar to his pinned dragon, uncertainty warring with pride. Jaehaerys, the king sat rigid, his face pale, lips pressed tight, yet his eyes burned with defiance. A lifetime of rule, of being the Dragonlord King, warred with the undeniable truth before him. Balthagar's voice lowered, dark and final. Fly back to your lands, Targaryens. Take your dragons, your pride, and your whispers of conquest, and remember this day. Remember who rules the lands of the long summer. Remember the true blood of Valyria, and tremble. For a long, breathless moment, there was only silence, broken by the labored breaths of the dragons. Then, slowly, Jaehaerys nodded, his voice strained. This is not over. Balthagar's gaze was sharp, unwavering. No. It has only begun. Azantius released Caraxes and Vagar, their bodies slumping to the earth, exhausted and broken. With a beat of his massive wings, Azantius rose higher, his roar splitting the sky as Balthagar stood unmoving upon his back, an unshakable silhouette against the darkening heavens. The Targaryens turned, their dragons limping through the air, tails tucked, pride shattered. They did not look back. They dared not. As they disappeared into the distant sky, Balthagar exhaled slowly, the tension coiling in his chest releasing into the wind. His gaze followed their retreat until they were nothing but specks on the horizon. Only then did he turn Azantius toward the east, toward the first demon fort. Toward home. The demon fort of Baleres loomed ahead, carved from the very bones of the earth, its black dragonstone walls rising like jagged fangs against the horizon. It was the first of the 5 great demon forts to be built, a bastion of Valyrian strength. Here, the banners of House Baleres snapped in the wind, blood-red dragons coiled around a laurel and a sunburst of flame, their wings spread wide in defiance. Azantius descended, his massive form stirring the air into a gale. The dragon guard stood at attention, their armor gleaming, their faces sharp with Valyrian features, silver-blonde hair, pale blue or sapphire eyes, the beauty of the old blood evident in every line. The common folk, nearly all of Valyrian descent, gathered in awe, their voices rising in cheers. Heir of Valyria. Prince of Flame. The Great Dragon. Balthagar dismounted with fluid grace, the weight of his armor seeming to vanish upon his shoulders. His presence was like a storm in human form, his aura crackling with restrained power. The steward of the demon fort, flanked by mages from the orders of fire and blood, approached swiftly, bowing low, their respect evident in every line of their posture. My prince, it has been a long time, the steward intoned, voice steady yet reverent. What brings you to the home of House Baleres? Balthagar nods, his gaze flickered over the assembled faces. The exiled heretics have been dealt with, for now. The steward's expression twisted in satisfaction, the mages nodding, murmuring agreements. Good, the steward said, voice firm. They needed a reminder. Balthagar's eyes narrowed. Send word to the demon fort of Draceryos. Summon the lords, and the Grand Master and mistresses of the orders to Fort Valeries. We have matters to discuss. The steward bowed deeply, turning to issue the orders as mages used the glass candles to send messages to the mages in the demon fort of Draceryos. He gestured toward the manse of House Valeries, its towers rising high above the walls. Please, my prince, come within, rest, and refresh yourself. It has been nearly a decade since you last graced your mother's home. Balthagar inclined his head, following the steward into the great manse. The halls of House Valeries were carved with ancient runes, their walls lined with Valyrian steel sconces, their floors polished smooth. Memories stirred as Balthagar walked, echoes of childhood, of his mother's presence, of the legacy she had passed on. 3 days later, the lords arrived, their banners snapping in the wind, their retinues trailing behind them like streams of silver and gold. Baeli's Valeries, Galion Gelionar, Mary's Kostagar, Reman Tyveros, Galix Azantone, Tyriavar Zobridar, Malimar Ilver, Lady Kayla Magiros the Grand Mistress of the Fire Dragon, and Valyrian Maleres the Grand Master of the Blood Dragon, and the Dark Mistress, all seated themselves around the grand circular table in the hall of House Valeries, a detailed map of the known world spread before them. The map extended from the Summer Isles to the Shadow Lands, the Bone Mountains to the farthest reaches of the Bleeding Sea, each detail painstakingly drawn, each territory a reminder of the vastness of the world, and the ambitions of House Draceryos. Balthagar stood at the head of the table, the newly reforged armor gleaming behind him, Stormbringer sheathed at his side, the blood ring glinting darkly on his finger. His presence dominated the chamber. He spoke, recounting the events of the confrontation with the Targaryens, his voice steady, sharp, and unwavering. The lords listened, some leaning forward in anticipation, others nodding in grim satisfaction. Baeli's Baleris voice broke through, pride swelling in his tone. The blood of Draceryos, of your fierce mother, it flows strong. This is our legacy. Reman Tyveros gave a scoffing laugh, his tone laced with disdain. And now the Magers and Rogers will come, those lesser bloods ever scraping for power they cannot hold, always clamoring for recognition since Maelor's time. Baeli's smirked, nodding in agreement. Balthagar's expression remained unchanged. They are a means to an end. They will swear the blood oath, and if they falter, they will burn. I do not suffer weakness in my ranks. Lady Kayla's gaze sharpened, her voice calm and calculating. Then let us see if they prove worthy of the banner they seek to serve. Before Balthagar could respond, Mary's Kostagar leaned forward, a parchment in his hand. A letter written from one of mages in the Mages' Tower, a missive from Commander Viman Gondaries, my prince. He unfurled the letter, his voice clear. The tribes of Noth have been unified. Chief Kalemba Azuka has pledged his loyalty, and the rebuilding of the Valyrian fort is complete. The port has been expanded, trade flowing once more. A town has begun to flourish around the fort's walls. Lord Gelionar nodded, his voice firm. Commander Vimand is well known among the Dragon Guards, a man of discipline and iron will. His success speaks for itself. Balthagar's gaze rested on the map, then lifted, a faint, dangerous smile playing upon his lips. Indeed. A man of such accomplishments deserves a reward, but I will see it with my own eyes, judge his work for myself. Then, we will speak of rewards. The lords murmured in agreement, the chamber humming with quiet approval. The meeting continued into the night, the torches casting long shadows across the faces of those who would shape the world. The lords of Valyria gathered, the heirs of flame and blood, their ambitions set alight. And Balthagar, the great dragon, the heir of Valyria, sat at the heart of it all, an inferno waiting to be unleashed. 0 comments 0 vote. Bonds in blood, dreams in flame. I have stated many times before, read the auxiliary chapters, as they contain most, if not all the lore for this fanfic. And whatever you may find, read in the chapters here will be subtle as to not fill these chapters with so much lore. If you don't care about the lore, great, just don't make dumb comments that are redundant, repetitive. If you read it, and you still manage to somehow make a dumb comment, which one of you did in the early chapters, even after admitting to reading the auxiliary chapter, no offense to you, whoever you are, then I am truly baffled by your meager reading and thinking capabilities. Best to properly read the chapters next time. All lore are always going to be in the auxiliary chapters. I will always try to remember to mention when I add an auxiliary chapter or update one in the newest volume chapters, but as I stated previously I will also probably forget, so it is best to check up on the existing ones for any updates or check if there is a new one. These were made so you can avoid making dumb comments and me to avoid reading them. From now on, I will save my time and most of my brain cells from reading any dumb, redundant, repetitive comments you make. Have a great day, night, and enjoy this chapter, or not. To be honest, I felt like I could have done better with this chapter, but, meh, so what? Demon Fort of Valyria, 187 AD, 85 AC. 2 days had passed since the last council. Atop the dragonstone walls of the Demon Fort of Valyria, obsidian towers loomed like the claws of some long-dead WYRM, massive, jagged, eternal. Beneath their shadow, 2 small hosts approached, banners fluttering in the sea breeze. 20 guards for House Maegor, 20 for House Roger. Just enough for protection along the road and to show status without threatening insult. Lord Maloros Maegor and Lord Aenor Roger rode at the forefront, cloaked in finery more suited for court than for shadowed war castles. Beside them, each had brought a single advisor, men of learning, but untested eyes. And yet none among them, not lord nor steward nor soldier, could hide their awe as they neared the great obsidian gates. The gate was vast, towering twice the height of an elephant, carved with silver veins shaped into draconic script, reinforced by the best steel of the Valyrian smiths. Above, dozens of dragon guards and dragon hunters stood in silent vigilance, dark-eyed and unmoving, their weapons ready, their armor pristine. As the gates opened with a low groan, the 2 lords and their escorts stepped within and were struck silent. Inside, the demon fort was not the barren martial keep they had imagined. It was a city unto itself, marketplaces brimming with exotic goods, taverns echoing with laughter, smithies hammering steel. Civilians in elegant robes walked with pride, speaking High Valyrian, faces bearing marks of a dozen houses long thought scattered. Children played in the wide streets. Priests of the old gods of Valyria offered flame in silver shrines. And above them all, the crest of House Draceryos, House Valyrian, and House Gelionar hung from the spires. A steward approached, robed in silver-threaded black, flanked by 2 mages. It was Tanis, the steward who had served Balthagar since his early return. He nodded once towards them and gestured them forward. Welcome to the Demon Fort. The prince awaits. Inside the Grand Hall, the same that had hosted the last council, the lords were assembled once more. The Grand Master of the Blood Dragon sat in somber silence, robed in crimson-colored silk. Beside him, the Grand Mistress of the Fire Dragon Order, cloaked in flame-colored silk. The Dark Mistress, veiled in shadow, sat without expression, like a statue cast in mourning obsidian. Lord Valys Baleris, Lord Baenair Matarion, Lord Marys Costagar, and Lord Galion Gelionar, and the rest of the lords sat in the semicircle of stone thrones, eyes fixed on the 2 newcomers as they were escorted in by 4 dragon guards. The heavy doors closed behind them with a thunderous finality. The silence weighed upon them. And then, they noticed the lords were not gazing at them, but past them. They turned. At the far end of the hall, framed by the great window that faced the volcano's heartland, stood a solitary figure. Balthagar Draceryos. His back was straight, hands clasped behind him, his dark crimson and black robes lined with gold thread. His armor glinted at the edges. Stormbringer rested at his hip, sheathed but ever ominous. His silver-white hair was untamed, reaching the ends of his jaw, swaying gently with the breeze from the open archway. His back still turned to them, he spoke, his voice was like cold steel wrapped in velvet. Welcome, Lords Maegor and Roger. They bowed, deeply. They had expected arrogance, perhaps youth, perhaps fire without discipline. What they saw was presence, pure, suffocating presence. His eyes, as he turned, were magma. Living flame. They stared into him and felt themselves reduced to ash. It is an honor, Lord Maegor said hoarsely, bowing low, his voice barely holding. To stand before the heir of Valyria. Sit, Balthagar said, motioning to the stone table surrounded by flame-carved chairs. They obeyed. Balthagar remained standing. You were summoned, he said, voice clear, not as guests, but as those who have asked for 3 generations to rejoin what they abandoned. The time of your pleading is over. I offer you one chance. An oath, and a blood oath. One binds your word. The other binds your bloodline. Lord Maegor stiffened. Lord Roger said nothing, lips tight. Balthagar's eyes flicked to Aenor Roger. Roger hesitated. My lord, I seek not to offend. Only to ask. Lee is ripe for rule, but fractured. If I am to ensure its loyalty and rebuild it under your banner, I must have the power of coin behind me. I propose a bank. A bank of Valyria, to stand against Iron Bank of Bravos. He stopped. No sound left his lips. His hands clawed at his throat. Slowly, terribly, he began to rise from his chair, feet scraping, until he hung a foot above the ground, invisible fingers choking the life from him. Gasps echoed. Even the noble lords of Valyria stared in alarm. Balthagar did not move, save for his hand, raised and clenched as if squeezing air. Be careful, he said coldly, not to choke on your aspirations, Lord Aenor. He released. Roger collapsed into his seat, gasping for breath. The silence in the hall was a wall of stone. You will have Lee, Roger, Balthagar said coldly. You will rebuild it in my name. You will create your bank. But not a bank of Valyria. That name belongs only to the empire I will forge. You may raise a lesser one in the meantime, under our oversight. Do not presume to dictate what belongs to dragons. He turned to Lord Maegor. And you. Volantis will be yours. But the tigers and elephants are finished. No more factions. No more nobles squabbling. All will bow or burn. From Volantis to Tirosh. Neither man dared speak. You may accept, or leave, and face extinction. They accepted. By the next day, the rites were complete. The sacred flames were lit, the runes etched in blood and ash. Oaths were spoken. Then the blood oath, a sorceress rite that bound their houses to Balthagar's will. Not even the unborn would be exempt. Lord Maegor spoke first after the rites. I can bring 2 other houses to our fold, my prince. Their loyalties will be unquestioned. Lord Roger added, and 3 from Lee. Men of coin and conviction. You have my word. Balthagar nodded. Good. 2 fleets will await to aid you. 2 legions of dragon guards. A legion of dragoons by land. And dragons to shadow the conquest. At the edge of the chamber, Stormbringer pulsed faintly within its sheath. Roger bowed. We shall not fail you. Balthagar smiled thinly. See that you don't. 3 days later, Summer Sea, north of Noth, 187 AD 85 AC. The skies above the Summer Sea were thick with cloud, dark gray against the shimmering waters below. Azantius flew with purpose, wings beating like thunder, scales glistening like molten metal. Atop the great dragon, Balthagar sat still, his cloak trailing like a banner, eyes scanning the coast ahead. Just behind, Egovac's sword, yet Valis Baleres commanding his beast with the calm ease of an elder warrior. Below them, a fleet of 20 ships sailed in neat formation, their black sails etched with red dragons. Balthagar's forces, sent from Fort Kostagar 3 days ago, had been shadowed by his flight today. Now, the coast of Noth revealed itself. The port had grown. Stone piers jutted into the sea. Homes and markets spread in organized fashion. Valyrians and Nothi worked side by side. Crimson banners flapped above every gate. The cleared earth glowed with life. They landed on a woody open field near the port. Balthagar dismounted. His reforged armor gleamed, bearing no name but marked by power. Valis followed, his traditional Valyrian steel plate impressive, shoulders crowned with carved dragon heads, helmet his side. Beautiful, isn't it? Balthagar said. Even in peace, it breathes purpose, Valis replied. Balthagar nodded. I plan to visit the Summer Isles after this. An old friend, Princess Nalakara, awaits. Much to discuss. Especially the Targaryens. From the port, a contingent arrived, 20 dragon guards, several mages, and the steward assigned to the port. All bowed deeply. My prince, the steward began, we have prepared horses if. Balthagar waved him off. Why rush through beauty? We will walk. That is why we built it so close. He noticed a cleared patch of land. That, a foundation, my prince, said the steward. Commander Vimin cleared it in case a shipyard is ordered. Balthagar's smile was genuine. He thinks ahead. I like that. Another contingent approached, Lord Kostagar, Lord Gelionar, and the Veiled Dark Mistress. Balthagar turned to the elder lords with a sly grin. You may wish to take horses, my lords. These hills are not as kind as they once were. Chuckles rippled through the group. They walked. Past hills, workers expanded the town. Slave-marked pirates and slavers toiled beside Nothi carpenters. Small markets bloomed. Soldiers saluted as they passed. Whispers of the prince followed them. At the fort's gates stood a man giving orders, directing soldiers and builders alike. Commander Vimin Gondaries. He turned, saw them, and fell to one knee. My prince, he said, head bowed. I am at your command. Rise, commander, Balthagar said. Vimin stood tall, short silver hair, sharp violet eyes, a beard lined with age and discipline. I am proud of what you've accomplished, Balthagar said. The port, the town, and a space for the shipyard. You think ahead. Vimin bowed again. Forgive me, my prince, for taking the initiative. Don't apologize, Balthagar said. A person who sees beyond today is a rare thing. You honor me. Do you have family? Yes, my prince. A wife. 3 children. They live in Fort Balthagar. Balthagar nodded. And how long have you served? 30 years in the Dragon Guard. Under your father, Prince Tagan. Do you know the blood oath? Vimond hesitated. I do. Then kneel. Vimond dropped to one knee. I name you Lord Vimond of House Gondaries, Lord of Noth. You will swear the oath now. Vimond did. Blood was drowned, a sealed pact of a bloodied handshake, spoken in High Valyrian, using blood magic, the words spoken in tongues older than the doom. You are no longer a commander alone, Balthagar said. You are a noble. This land, this fort, is your seat. Make it worthy. Vimond's voice trembled with pride. My sons and their sons shall guard it. For you. For House Draceryos. For Valyria. Balthagar turned to Kostagar. Send ships to escort his family. Treat them as befits their new station. He turned to Vimond. By week's end, present your house's banner, the steward shall aid you. They walked together to the fort. Evening, Valyrian fort of Noth. The room was large and warm, silk curtains drawn, the hearth glowing. Balthagar sat in a high-backed chair, sipping wine from a silver goblet. His armor was gone. His robe was dark crimson, trimmed in gold. The blood oath was done. The town growing. The future, closer. He sat in silence. Then the door creaked open. He did not turn. The dark mistress entered, her veil still on. She walked to the other chair and sat. He set down his goblet. Turned to her. She removed her veil. Lady Orisa. She was beautiful beyond mortal bounds, black hair like ink, pale skin like moonlight, and dark amethyst eyes that shimmered like hidden storms. She smiled faintly. My little prince. There was no mockery in her voice. Only quiet affection. Almost maternal. Balthagar smiled back, his eyes glowing in the firelight. Lady Orisa, he said. 1 comments 0 vote. What burns within? I have added 2 new auxiliary chapters, Valyrian army structure and legion organization, and the 3 orders of Valyria. I also edited the chapter for dragons, great dragons, and their differences, just mainly the first part. I took heavy inspiration from David Lightbringer's video on his theorized dragon types in ASOIAF. Evening, Valyrian Fort of Noth, 187 AD 85 AC. The hearth burned low in the chamber of dark stone, its orange glow washing over etched obsidian tiles and casting shadows across the polished floor. Embers crackled, reflecting off blackened iron sconces. The room smelled of old parchment, dried myrrh, and dragonbone incense. Balthagar Draceryos stood alone beside the fire, his armored shoulders broad beneath a black robe laced with glyphs. A silence heavier than iron hung in the air. His golden red eyes, once serene, now held storms. When the door opened, it did not creak. Lady Orisa, the dark mistress of the Order of Shadows, stepped through with the elegance of a whisper. Her veil was silken midnight, but she lifted it slowly as she approached, revealing the calm lines of her face, ageless, sharp, beautiful in a way that was almost unnatural. Her eyes, shadowed by wisdom and sorrow, fixed on him. You called me, my prince, she said softly. He did not look up. I did. She came closer, stepping into the light of the hearth. You have not spoken of Karth. You returned changed. Even your silence carries weight. I did not return, he replied, voice low. I survived. Lady Orisa inclined her head. I will not ask what happened in the House of the Undying. But I hope, one day, you will remember my words. The ones I gave you as a boy. The ones I give you now. And those I may yet give, if you will allow me. He finally looked at her. Your words kept me alive. That will have to be enough. Her voice softened. You were always strong. A prodigy even among the gifted. The kind born once in 1,000 years. Magic followed you even then. Now, it surrounds you. I feel it. Like the world bends toward you, not the other way around. Balthagar's eyes returned to the flame. You're not wrong. Orisa stepped closer, her hands folding gently before her. So, what happened? A long pause. Then, I saw them. Her voice tightened. Your family. He nodded, slowly. My father. Weakened, bones sharp beneath skin. My brother, a breath from death. And my mother. His voice cracked, the emotions of Balthagar, or the Balthagar before him still lingering heavily, barely alive. Whispering my name. The fire flared. A gust of heat surged through the chamber as the flames danced unnaturally high. Shadows recoiled, twisting. The runelaced ring on his hand hummed faintly. His armor responded to his fury, metal groaning faintly beneath his robe. Lady Orisa stepped forward, reached out gently, and placed her hands on his. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have seen something. I should have acted. You could not have known, he said, his voice now a hollow murmur. Even if you, the Grand Master of the Blood Dragon, and the Fire Mistress had joined me, I am not sure it would have changed anything. He pulled his hands away, flexing them as if to recall the memory. When I walked into the House of the Undying, they were gathered, 30 of them. Frail men with lips stained blue, drunk on their own madness and shade of the evening. Goblets still full on the table. Their ritual had failed, or nearly so. I think, they tried to steal something from my family. Power? Orisa asked. Souls, he said flatly. Or what remains after the flesh fades. He stepped toward the hearth, and the flames bowed to him as if called. They were dying already. The ritual left them weak. The power they summoned devoured their vitality. I walked into the chamber unnoticed, blade drawn, and rage filled me. I remember, red. Only red. Lady Orisa was quiet. There was no comfort in her eyes, only shared pain. You carry it well, too well. I will carry worse, he replied. My plans demand it. The fire began to settle, returning to its quiet crackle. The shadows eased. Orisa's voice came soft, but resolute. Then walk the path with eyes wide, Balthagar. For even darkness must choose which flame it obeys. 3 days later, summer sea approaching Hala, 187 AD, 85 AC. The sea glittered beneath the midday sun, calm as molten glass, the air rich with the scent of salt, fruit, and sea spice. 10 ships carved through the blue, banners of House Draceryos rippling atop their masts. Upon the lead ship, Balthagar stood silent on the deck, his gaze fixed upon the vast green silhouette of Hala, the largest of the Summer Isles. Azantius flew above, casting a long shadow over the water. His gleaming metallic scales shimmered in red and iron, wings white as castles. Behind him, the form of Egovax followed, wings slicing the air like razors. Ahead, the island swelled in detail, rolling jungle hills, sheer cliffs, rivers veining toward the sea. They approached the southern coast, near the Sweet Lotus Vale, where the city of Ebonhead rose from the mouth of the river. The city was carved from native stone, white, gray, and pale gold, walls flowered with vines and purple banners fluttering above the spires. The banner of House Kara flew high, a purple lotus with crossing spears on a white field. Balthagar's eyes narrowed. He had not seen this coast since he was a boy. Valys Baleres stepped beside him. They've changed much. Not enough, Balthagar replied. As they docked, Summer Islander guards in scaled armor stood at the ready, iron, with gleaming spears tipped with forged iron blades. Their armor bore vibrant cloth sashes and bright tattoos, and their formation parted with discipline. Princess Nalakara awaited them at the harbor steps, standing tall despite her age. Her skin was rich brown, her white hair braided down her back and bound in gold rings. Her robes were flowing silk, deep violet and pearl white, and her staff bore her house crest. She bowed her head, a formal gesture of honor. Balthagar nodded in return, the bare minimum a dragonlord would offer. Prince Balthagar, she said warmly, her voice low and regal. You've grown into your fire. She smiled gently. Come closer, Prince, let me look upon the heir of Valyria. As Balthagar approaches closer to her, she says, you carry your father's silence, but not his mercy. And you still wield grace like a blade, Balthagar replied. She laughed softly, then gestured. Come. The city awaits. The next morning, Palace of House Kara, Lotus Courtyard. The Lotus Courtyard was a place of beauty and peace. White walls curved around still ponds filled with blooming lotus flowers. Silken sunshades stretched across wooden beams, casting golden light on the courtyard floor. The scent of fruit, smoke, and spice lingered in the air. Balthagar sat across from Princess Nala. Beside her was her heir, a woman in her 50s with high cheekbones and quiet eyes. Valys Baleres stood beside his prince and nephew. You've increased your patrols, Balthagar said, eyes scanning the movement beyond the garden walls. Nala nodded. We have had reports, pirates, slavers, corsairs. The old peace is breaking. Even Umbaru and Wallano stir. And House XO of the Red Flower Vale, they have begun their marches again. Balthagar leaned forward. Then now is the time to abandon tradition. The air stilled. I come not with deception or false smiles, he said. The world will burn or rise. I intend for it to rise. Under my rule, Valyria will stretch across oceans. You can be a part of that, your house elevated as rulers of Hala. Or you can be an obstacle. Nala stared. You speak like a conqueror. I am, he said plainly. She exhaled. You are not the boy I knew. I remember you, Balthagar said. You traded with my father and grandfather. You were a friend. That earns you my respect. But not my restraint. Nala's voice was calm. Even Valyria, in its pride, never conquered the Summer Isles. They said we were fractured, not worth the effort. Your forebears preferred our goldenheart bows, not our thrones. My predecessors were short-sighted, Balthagar said. They feared chaos. I will master it. She blinked slowly. You are young. But you speak like you have seen lifetimes. He pointed to her. Unify the Isles. Rule Hala. And do so under the flame of Valyria. And if we refuse, then I return with fire. And no lotus will bloom again. Silence. Her daughter's eyes dropped to the floor. Then, Nala rose. Then perhaps it is time, for the Summer Isles to bend, not in chains, but in choice. Balthagar stood with her. All must choose a side, he said. Before the storm chooses for them. 0 comments 0 vote. Lotus and Blood. Sweet Lotus Vale, Hala 187 AD 85 AC. The scent of blooming lotuses drifted on the morning breeze as the sun bathed the waters around Ebonhead in golden light. In the open hall atop the Sweet Lotus Vale, morning conversation resumed. Princess Nalakara sat poised across from the Prince of Valyria, her light robes woven with bright orchid thread, her posture straight, yet uncertain. She watched him closely. Your presence unsettles me, Prince Balthagar, she said, careful but firm. Valys Baleries shifted beside him, his violet eyes narrowing, tone hardening. Choose your words with care, princess. Balthagar lifted a hand, calm and still. Let her speak, uncle. His voice carried no heat, only finality. Princess Nala exhaled slowly. You are said to be 18 named days old, but you stand taller than any islander warrior, built like a man twice your age. Your face bears the youth of one barely into his second decade, yet your eyes, she hesitated, then said plainly, they devour. They burn. Like a flame held back by skin. Balthagar's lips turned faintly upward. And yet you sit across from me, unburned. I see a man carved by fire and shadow, she said. It is not natural. Nor is Valyria, he replied. She said nothing more. Silence fell, thick and hot like the summer air. At last, she leaned forward and declared, I will swear my oath. My house shall bend the knee to Draceryos. Balthagar inclined his head. Then let it be known that House Kara of Hala now stands beneath the wings of Valyria. Your people may keep their traditions, their songs, their spirits, but know this, all matters of military, foreign trade, and the higher arts, magic, belong to Valyria. And Valyria answers to me. She nodded. Understood. Balthagar stood then. Sworn oaths, however, are wind without blood. They fade when men die. Her daughter, seated beside her, tensed. Young, proud, fierce. And what do you mean by that? Zama, Princess Nala warned. But Balthagar had already answered. I speak of blood oaths, princess. Your mother's blood, offered in ritual, so her line remains bound. Not by trust, but by magic and blood. I may trust her. I do not know what grows in her grandchildren's hearts. This ensures they never grow traitorous. Zama Kara stood abruptly, but her mother raised a hand, silencing her without a word. After a long breath, Princess Nala rose as well. Then let it be done. The ritual was simple but absolute. A shallow cut across her palm. Balthagar's own blood offered in return. The ancient tongue spoke through him, Valyrian twisted by sorcery, and the air grew still, charged, humming with unseen power. The blood ran down the black steel basin etched with Draceryos runes. A soft red glow pulsed. A hiss escaped the stone beneath their feet. The pact was sealed. Not with ink, but magic. Palace of Kara, Sweet Lotus Vale 187 AD 85 AC. The court of House Kara gathered the next day beneath a sky layered in pearl-white clouds, unaware of what shadows moved beneath them. The palace was modest by Valyrian standards, but tall and ornate for summer islander nobility. Drapes of dyed barkcloth hung along the wide archways, vibrant purples and greens rippling in the wind. The court chamber was carved from smooth stone. Balthagar Draceryos now sat on the highest dais of the hall, his armor forged black and gray with glimmers of crimson veins, Valyrian steel reforged by his own hand. His cloak flowed behind him, dark-stitched. On his left stood Lord Valys Baleries, armored in golden steel traced with Valyrian glyphs, his violet eyes sharp beneath his highbrow. On Balthagar's right sat Princess Nala, her throne lower by one step, by design. In the distant shadows, veiled and still, stood the dark mistress. Cloaked in black, she remained unseen by all but one. Her presence did not breathe. It simply watched. Above the palace flew two shadows vast and ancient. One was golden and robust, Egovax, roaring once to stir the wind. The other, Azontius, flew higher and wider still, his scales shining like darkened metal under the sun. The gathered nobles and chieftains of the sweet Lotus Vale, those loyal to House Kara, stood in uneasy silence. They were proud men and women, but they were not fools. Valyria had returned, and it stared them in the face. Princess Nala rose to address them. People of the sweet Lotus Vale. I have sworn my house to Valyria. House Draceryos rules Valyria's rebirth. I have done this not in weakness, but in wisdom. Our traditions shall live on. Our songs shall still be sung. But the world shifts, and we must not be washed away with it. She turned her gaze on the hall. We shall maintain our local guard, and our warriors shall defend our lands. But we will no longer hoard spears. There will be no private armies. Foreign trade will henceforth pass through Valyria's hands. Our goods will enrich our island, but no longer feed enemies of Valyria. A low rumble of discomfort rolled through the court. Then came the roar. Not from man, but beast. The court shuddered as Egovax cried again, fire flaring from his nostrils above the roof. Balthagar stood. When he spoke, it was like iron dragged over embers, quiet, slow, but burning. This is an opportunity, he said. Not a caller. Hala may rise with us, or be crushed by the world's turning. You speak of legacy. Then build one worth remembering. For your children. For your children's children. Let them inherit strength, not ruins. He sat again. The room held its breath. Private council room, Palace of Kara that night. The candlelight danced gently in the private council chamber, its polished wood walls lined with summer island tapestries and maps. Balthagar sat at the head of the table, Baelies to his right, and across from him, Princess Nala, her daughter Yaya, and an aged advisor named Kavano, bent-backed and white-bearded, but sharp of mind and tongue. Beside the table, veiled and shadow-bound, the dark mistress stood quiet. Balthagar's tone was measured, commanding. Your house has always honored ours. Even when the freehold fractured. Your trade with my grandfather and father is remembered. But understand, our next steps are already in motion. He turned to Tobero and Nala. You remember Wallano. Tall Trees Town. Nala nodded. The Mad Dragon's Battle. My grandfather, Balthagar Draceryos, on his voyage to the east, came upon a pirate fleet poised to sack the harbor. With Azontius in the skies, he burned their ships and left their bones for the gulls. Since then, House Exhar of Wallano has welcomed us openly. Gems, incense, fruit, and above all, ebony wood, our ships have been built with their bounty. I will go to Wallano next, he said. And I believe Prince Daba Exhar will greet me with eagerness, not hesitation. His words turned colder. As for the Red Flower Vale, House Co., I will deal with them personally. Before all. Before your people. Before the world. They will know what it means to defy. The dark mistress shifted slightly but said nothing. Baelis's face darkened. He remained silent. When the hall had emptied, and only shadows remained, Baelis spoke. Have you gone mad? Balthagar, Halfarmorden facing a glass candle burning red on the table, did not turn. You mean to face them alone. I mean to show them. Baelis slammed his gauntlet on the stone table. You are no god of war. Even if they are not an army, you are not immortal. Balthagar turned slowly, shadows licking his face. Then they'll see what I am. Before words became fire, the dark mistress spoke, her voice a velvet blade. Peace, both of you. My prince, your plan will hold. My shadows will be nearby. As will the mages, and so will your uncle, and the dragons. You are not alone. Balthagar nodded once, silently. Chamber of glass, Palace of Kara, moments later. The room as dark as all candles were doused, save one. A glass candle, flickering with a red flame, stood tall at the center of a ruined table. Balthagar closed his eyes and reached out. A moment passed. Then the fire flared. A voice answered. Lord Kostagar, Balthagar said, eyes still closed. I know the moons have been hard. But harder still is the work yet to come. Soon, Hala will fall into place. When I finish with House Co., I will sail for Wallano and speak with Prince Daba. We will bring the Isles into the fold. He paused. But Umbaru, we have no ties to them. They will not bend. We will break them. I will need ships, a fleet, mages, soldiers, and fire enough to tame the summer sea. The flame pulsed once more. And the connection ended. 4 comments 0 vote. The Red Veil. 2 weeks after the Dragon's Battle. Year. 187 AD 85 AC. The stories always began the same, whispered on salt-kissed winds, told by pale-eyed sailors at riverside inns and wine-stained merchants who had seen too much. He faced them alone, they'd say in hushed awe. One man, one dragon, three of theirs, and yet none could bring him down. The tales came from every corner of the summer sea's northern shores. From the fishing hamlets hugging the southern outskirts of Volantis to the caravan stops deep in the Painted Mountains, all echoed the same impossibility, that a single dragon rider had stood against three Targaryens, King Jaehaerys, Prince Balon, and Prince Aemon, and their dragons, Vermithor, Vhagar, and Caraxes, and Wan. The stories varied in the telling, but all described a battle that left Caraxes with a deep, gouging bite mark along his flank. Vhagar returned with claw marks scored into her ancient scales, prints far too large and jagged to belong to any known dragon. Their return had not been triumphant. Their descent into King's Landing had been sluggish, their roars dulled by exhaustion, their riders ashen and shaken. No proclamation could undo what the realm had already seen. No decree could silence rumor. The defeat of three dragons was no longer a rumor. It was a reckoning. In Volantis, tension thickened in every marble hall. House Maegor and their newfound allies, two noble families yet unnamed but loyal to House Draceryos, prepared in secret, tightening their grip on the city's pulse. They whispered of a rising tide, of fire returning not as conquest, but as order. The old blood stirred uneasily. In Lee, House Roger grew bolder by the hour, rallying three families tied to their influence, names still veiled to the world but soon to emerge under the sigil of reborn Valyria. Their ships docked deeper into shadowed harbors, their alchemists and goldsmiths forging futures in Draceryos' name. But in Tirosh, there was only fear. They remembered House Matarion. They remembered betrayal. And now they saw the storm returning, tenfold in rage and bound in steel. They fortified walls, conscripted soldiers, and begged their gods for peace. And in Westeros, dread settled like morning fog. No bard sang of the king's return from Essos. There were no feasts, no declarations of triumph. Only silence. The dragon pit stood quiet. Vhagar and Caraxes rested in pain. The people whispered. The nobles stared. Even those who had once denied the rumors now looked at the wounds, wounds that should not have existed. The greatest dragons of Westeros had returned broken. That was all anyone truly needed to know. Red Keep, small council chamber. A heavy silence hung over the room. The long table was ringed by the most powerful in the realm, King Jaehaerys I, seated with furrowed brow and eyes shadowed with age, Queen Alysanne, her face unreadable, Prince Balon and Prince Aemon, each standing stiff and bruised, hiding shame behind the thinnest veil of composure. Curlys Velaryon, Lord of the Tides, stood at the end of the table, arms crossed, disapproval carved into every line of his face. I warned you, he said finally, his voice cutting through the silence. I warned you not to fly into the storm of Valyria as if you were still the masters of flame. Balon bristled. We thought to confront a murmur. You confronted something far worse, Curlys said coldly. The queen shifted. The Grand Maester cleared his throat, but no one looked his way. Lord Giles Morrigan, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, stood at the king's back, hand resting on his sword. The king raised one hand to silence the murmuring that followed. He did not slay us, he muttered. He let us live. That truth struck harder than any blow. And then, movement. A figure stepped forward from the far corner of the chamber. None had seen him enter. No sound had betrayed him. He was garbed in deep shadow. Long, layered black fabric that flowed like smoke, and tight leather gloves bound with steel-threaded cord. His face was masked, but his eyes, those unmistakable Valyrian eyes, gleamed beneath the hood like twin shards of amethyst. Swords were drawn in an instant. Who? Cried Aemon, stepping forward, blade out. Stand down. Barked Sir Giles, but too late. Balon's blade, dark sister, was already pointed at the intruder's chest. The man only smiled behind his mask. In his gloved hand, he held a strange circular device, a polished sphere with fine grooves, his thumb pressed firmly against a small depression at its center. One twitch, he said in a soft voice, and this chamber becomes your grave. Gaseous death, concocted by the finest alchemists of Valyria, infused with Carthene toxins, and enchanted by mages you do not believe exist. It will fill the air 6 times over this room's size. There will be no escape. Stillness. The air grew thick with sweat and fear. Even the queen paled. You rode to Valyria unbidden, he said, his tone still quiet, almost amused. And survived. That was impressive. But foolish. Who are you? The king demanded. I am a shadow master, he said, lowering the device slightly, here to act upon the prince's will. And I bring you a message. They stared. In 1.5 moons' time, he continued, you are invited to a meeting. On Wallano. You may bring your dragons, your ships, your court, your swords. Bring the 7 if you must. He chuckled. Prince Balthagar Draceryos does not care what you bring. He only offers this one chance, to avoid war. Then the grin beneath the mask, somehow visible, as if the shadow itself bent to his smile. What madness overcame you? He added, shaking his head. You rode into the fire, and barely crawled back out. And then, before a single footstep sounded, he was gone, vanished into the dark. The flickering torches wavered as if gasping in his wake. No one spoke for a long while. 2 days later, Red Flower Vale, Eastern Hala. The jungle wind carried the scent of crushed lotus and spilled blood. 10 sleek Valyrian ships had sailed under cover of moonless skies, gliding past the outlying coral reefs and anchoring on either side of the river delta that split the land beneath the jungle-cloaked city, Zathari, one of the last strongholds of House Ko, located at the eastern coast of Hala, specifically at the mouth of Red Flower Vale. 5 ships to the north. 5 to the south. All offloaded in silence, dragon guards and dragon hunters in dark steel forged armor etched with Valyrian glyph. The plan was clear: surround the city, squeeze it from the jungle, crush its resistance, and bring the last remnants of House Ko to heel. But House Ko had struck first. Scouting parties had pushed westward, seizing outlying villages of the Sweet Lotus Vale, claiming them under the bloodstained banners of the Vale. Yet swift was the response. Valyrian troops and the warriors of Sweet Lotus Vale descended upon the conquered towns, purging the invaders. Many were given a choice: join House Kara, pledge to Valyria, or die. Now, the final host of House Ko, numbering in the hundreds, stood defiant in the jungle clearing, between the walls of Zathari and the looming hill to the west. Upon that hill stood Balthagar Draceryos. His armor shone like a storm-forged monolith, Sith runes etched in burning crimson across every plate. His helm crowned his form like a beast of terror, horned and faceless. Only the slit revealed any semblance of man, and even there, the glow of his eyes betrayed something far beyond a man, something unnatural. At his left stood Valis Baleres, sheathed in his house's ancestral Valyrian steel armor. At his right, the veiled form of the Dark Mistress. Far above, circling like shadows in the sky, flew Azontius and Egovax, their wings blotting out the sun in silent arcs. The host arrayed behind Balthagar, 1,500 dragon guards, 500 dragon hunters, and 6,000 summer islanders, including former Red Flower warriors who had bent the knee. Mages stood scattered, their eyes flickering with inner flame. Before them, at the hill's base, gathered the last warriors of House Ko, armed, defiant, but surrounded. They mocked the idea that this young princeling would face them alone. Mad, Valis muttered. You're mad. Just like your grandfather. Balthagar grinned beneath his helm. Madness, he said, is only blasphemy until it conquers. And then he moved. He descended the hill in utter silence, yet the air shattered with tension. His presence distorted the world, time slowed, breath caught, and every heartbeat thudded like a war drum. The warriors of House Ko had seen battle. They had faced pirates, jungle beasts, and even the golden blades of the free cities. But they had never seen this. Balthagar was not a man. He was an oncoming storm. As he reached the first line of spearmen, the ground beneath him rippled. Not with magic, but with sheer momentum, his advance felt like a siege ram crashing through flesh and bone. Stormbringer, in his grip, swung low with a howling arc of force. The blade sheared through 5 men at once, their torsos separated mid-stride, blood erupting like fountains onto the trampled red earth. A javelin flew toward him, he caught it mid-air, crushed the haft with one hand, and hurled the splinters into the eyes of the thrower before his sword found the man's neck. Then, chaos. The warriors surged, shouting, stabbing, slashing, but their weapons barely scratched his armor. Sparks danced off his vambraces as he took blows that would have felled oxen. His retaliation was merciless. He spun, his black cloak swirling like wings of shadow, and carved a dozen bodies open in less than 10 breaths. He moved like a phantom of war, his footwork precise, brutal, and unrelenting. He did not dance with his blade, he hunted with it. When spears closed in, he ducked low, rolled under their reach, and exploded upward with force-driven strength, cleaving through chests and skulls alike. Every swing of Stormbringer carried the weight of ancient fury, augmented by Sith power and honed through ritual blood. They tried to flank him. 2 warriors rushed in from behind. Balthagar didn't turn. He raised a hand, fingers clawed, and they stopped mid-charge, hovering in the air as if hung by invisible hooks. Their screams were cut short as their bones imploded inward, blood dribbling from ears and eyes as their bodies crumpled like paper crushed in a fist. Another wave charged. He welcomed them. With a roar not of voice but of raw force, Balthagar slammed a boot into the ground, a shockwave burst from the impact. Earth cracked, air bent, and the front rank of enemies flew backward as if struck by an unseen hammer. Some were torn from the inside, their organs burst from pressure alone. Others staggered, stunned, and then they died. Every few moments, he let himself slip. The fury inside, the darkness he so carefully tamed, was unshackled. Force rage filled his limbs. His body swelled with invisible current, every movement a blur. Men tried to parry, only to find their swords snapped, their arms severed, their lives extinguished before their eyes registered the blow. Sith lightning arced once, from his left hand to a cluster of archers. It did not kill, it tortured. Bodies convulsed, mouths frothing, nerves unraveling under sustained agony before the final mercy of unconsciousness, or death. Still, they came. Still, they died. Some dropped to their knees, begging. He spared none. His silence was their sentence. A berserker of House Ko, massive and tattooed in jungle ink, charged with twin axes, roaring a challenge. Balthagar did not raise his blade. He sidestepped the charge with preternatural grace, caught the man's wrist midswing, and with a twist and a bone-crunching snap, ripped the arm clean from its socket. As the warrior screamed, Balthagar drove his gauntleted fist into the man's throat, crushed it flat, and let him fall in twitching silence. Time lost meaning. Blood coated his armor like paint. Corpses lay broken in grotesque shapes. Limbs without owners twitched in the mud. The air stank of ozone, burnt flesh, and spilled bowels. Far above, Azantius roared, a sound of judgment. Behind Balthagar, none had moved. Not Baelish. Not the Dark Mistress. Not the Valyrian host. They had seen bloodshed before, but not this. This was a slaughter. This was a legend. And when it ended, when the last of House Exho's warriors fell to the dirt, their defiance drowned in gore, Balthagar stood alone in a field of death. Steam rose from his pauldrons. His breathing was heavy. His sword, dripping with blood, the sword's ruins hummed. A single Summer Islander warrior dropped his weapon and whispered, "We have seen the will of Valyria made flesh." Zamakara, watching beside her mother atop the hill, turned her face from the carnage. "Is he even still a man?" she asked, voice full of fear, face the expression of someone who has just witnessed the most horrifying thing ever. Princess Nalakara did not answer immediately. Her eyes did waver, dread overcoming her from witnessing such a display. She watched as Balthagar turned his gaze upward toward the jungle canopy, toward the sun veiled in smoke. "No," she finally said. "No, he is not." 2 comments 0 vote. Shadows over Umbaru. Zathari. Hala, 3 days after the fall of Zathari, 187 AD 85 AC. The scent of charred wood still lingered faintly over Zathari, carried by a humid breeze from the south. Though the fires had died and the screams long faded, the memory of conquest hung thick in the air, a silent presence the city could not escape. Its people remained subdued, eyes cast downward, lips trembling in fear. They had witnessed horror, not merely an army of Valyrians or 2 dragons circling overhead like gods of death, but one man, a force unto himself. They saw a dragon cloaked in flesh, standing alone against hundreds. They saw Balthagar Draceryos. He did not falter. He did not fall. And now, that very man sat cross-legged atop a high hill overlooking the city. Zathari, the heart of Red Flower Vale, lay below him like a humbled offering. Behind him, the blackened slopes bore scars of fire and magic, scars carved by one who had descended like a storm. Azantius slumbered a short distance away, curled atop a nearby rise, his vast frame glinting under the dawn sun. The great dragon's dark red scales shimmered faintly, casting flickers of light upon the hilltop like scattered embers. But Balthagar's eyes were shut. His breath steady. He meditated. Pain radiated through his insides, not from visible wounds, but the ache of what had been pushed too far. Force rage, force lightning, force telekinesis, force drain. He had wielded them all together, at full strength. His heart had thundered like a war drum. His veins had nearly seared. Without the ritual of transformation, he would have collapsed. He might have died. The dark side is strength, but strength misused is ruin, he whispered, the words stolen by the wind. Ancient Sith gestures flowed through his fingers, delicate and controlled. He drew the force inward, not to destroy, but to mend. Sith healing was always a paradox, an unnatural act born of hatred and will. The cold heat of power sank into his bones. His muscles eased. His breath became deeper, more measured. Inside him, the holocron stirred. It never spoke in words, but pressed against his mind with locked vaults of layered knowledge. It gives only when earned, he murmured. It was not a gift, but a test. A crucible. The teachings of the Sith were never handed down, they were conquered, seized by those worthy of them. He recalled the legends of Darth Vitiate, Tenebrae, the closest any Sith had come to immortality, and even he was broken in the end. True immortality had never been achieved. Perhaps immortality was not a matter of one grand revelation, but of layers. Biological, magical, philosophical. A puzzle unsolved because it was too simple, or too vast. And so, I will solve it. A grin ghosted across his lips. He was only 18 name days old, yet already a legend. The heir of Aurion. The shadow reborn in fire. When he returns to Mardavia, when he sits upon the throne he would forge with his own hands, nothing would be beyond him. Not death. Not time. And so, he meditated. And so, he healed. And the world trembled, unaware that the dragon had only begun to stir. Zathari Palace, later that day. The palace of House Ko had been emptied of its soul. Tapestries torn down. Thrones of goldenheart wood splintered. Every sigil and banner burned away. In its place rose obsidian reliefs of the Draceryos sigil, red and gold, the winged flame of Valyria. The throne room, once dim and narrow, had been cleared. A great circular table stood at its center, a stretched leather map of the Summer Isles laid across it. Balthagar stood at its head, cloaked in his reforged armor, Stormbringer sheathed to his left side. Lord Valyrian Balthagar stood beside him, composed and quiet. The dark mistress lingered like a shadow in her robes of night blue. Princess Nalakara watched from the side, unreadable. The three commanders, Valar Raelnaris, Aenir Selnaros, and Egelon Dalrios, flanked the table, each armored and alert. With them stood 4 flamecallers and 3 bloodcallers. 7 powerful mages of war and healing. 10 galleons had already docked in the Zathari port, their hulls trimmed in black steel. Dragon guards, 4,000 strong, marched in quiet formation. Dragon hunters took to the towers. Order reigned beneath the smoke-stained sky. Balthagar placed a grey dragon marker upon Hala, then another smaller one on Tall Trees town. The people of Tall Trees remember, he said in High Valyrian. They never severed their loyalty. They remember who gave them steel and fire. His eyes met Nala's. She understood the unspoken words. House Draceryos and House Exhar, those ties ran deeper than any. He moved ships across the map, lines of fire, arcs of conquest. Lord Mary's Kostagar will arrive soon with 40 ships. 2 man-o-wars among them. He will land on the eastern coast of Umbaru. He turned to Aenir and Egelon. You two will take 8 galleons, circle south and west, then strike the western shore. We form the jaws. When Mary's lands, we close them. Aenir spoke, and if Umbaru has time to raise its walls. They won't. No wall can stop us, Balthagar said. You land fast, establish a foothold. When Lord Kostagar moves, I will descend on Azantius. He pointed at the mages. 2 flamecallers, 2 bloodcallers. 1 pair for each commander. You will ward them, guide them. No failure. 4 of the mages stepped forward, bowed, and aligned themselves beside their assigned commander. Balthagar picked up a sealed scroll and handed it to Aenir. Take a fast sloop from the port. Have some of our men disguised and the Summer Islanders who fought with us sail for Tall Trees town on the sloop. Make sure they deliver this to Prince Daba Exhar. No matter what, it is not to be opened. He looks at the flamecaller who will follow Aenir and continues, have a couple of your mages go on the sloop, ensure they place it in his hand. The flamecaller bowed and Aenir raised his fist to his chest, then extended his arm palm down, the Valyrian salute, and bowed. By Vermax's will, it shall be done. Balthagar turned to Valar Raelnaris. You remain in Zathari. Ensure order and stability. He gestured to the last bloodcaller and the 2 remaining flamecallers. Aid him. Quell unrest before it stirs. With only Lord Valyrian, the Dark Mistress, and Princess Nala remaining, Balthagar placed a red dragon token on Lotus Port, then another on Koj. Nala's brow lifted. Koj is no threat. House Zack builds ships, not armies. Which makes them more dangerous, Balthagar replied. Most swan ships are born in Koj's yards. If we take Koj, we hold their future by the keel. He leaned closer. Let them choose peace, or fire. Southern Hala Highlands 2 days later. The hills of Hala were jagged and wild, sharp green against the sea-blown sky. Upon one peak, Balthagar and Lord Valyrian Balthagar stood beside their dragons, gazing southward. For the past hour, they had flown and scouted, until they found it. A sloped plateau on the mountainside, half-cliff, half-ledge. Flat enough for a foundation. High enough to see every approach. The perfect site. Here, Balthagar said. The Valyrian fort shall rise. It will guard both land and sea. Lord Valys nodded, eyes scanning the range. It's well positioned. The southern coast is visible, and the Summer Islanders have already begun clearing ground for a port below. The initial plan had called for a direct stairway up the mountain, 8 men wide from base to summit, but it would take too long, and the incline too harsh. Instead, Balthagar had devised a switchback route. A road would begin southwest of the mountain's base. A town would be built upon a lower ridge to support a small garrison and for a rest stop, where taverns and shop will be built. Then a winding stairway would ascend southeast, linking town, port, and fortress in a defensive triangle. Balthagar gestured towards Egovax, Lord Baleri's golden dragon. You should oversee the construction, uncle. The fire mages would need a dragon to shape it. Lord Valys nodded. It shall be done. Eastern sea approaches of Umbaru 2 days later, early morning. Mist clung to the waves as 40 galleons sailed through dawn, their sails dark and quiet. At the front sailed the black wave, trimmed in obsidian, banners of House Costagar flapping in the breeze. Lord Mary's Costagar stood at its prow, helm tucked beneath his arm, his violet gaze fixed on the rising coastline of Umbaru. Jagged rocks, high cliffs, dense trees beyond. He turned to his master-at-arms. Signal the line. No horns. No drums. Prepare to land in silence. Then he descended below deck, entered the candle chamber, and placed both hands on the obsidian rim of the glass candle. Zathari, glass tower, minutes later. The candle flared. Balthagar's eyes opened. No words were spoken. He turned at once and descended the tower. The palace was silent as he passed through its halls. Azantius waited below. Balthagar mounted, the great dragon stirring as if summoned by thought alone. With a single roar and rush of wings, they rose into the clouds, toward Umbaru. Western shoreline of Umbaru hours later. Egelon Dalrios stood atop a rocky ledge, watching the waves break against the beach. Behind him, dragon guards spread out, securing the area. Dragon hunters vanished into the jungle's edge. 2 mages whispered incantations, flames coiling around their hands. Then the sky changed. A roar split the heavens. Azantius descended like a hammer of judgment, wings vast, breath molten. Sand and wind surged outward as he landed. Balthagar stepped down, black cloak trailing, eyes sharp. Report. Egelon saluted. Secure. No scouts. No resistance. Mapping begun. Balthagar nodded, then turned toward the sea. In the far shimmer of horizon, black sails began to appear. Lord Costagar had arrived. He drew in breath, his voice quiet. Then it begins. 4 comments 0 vote. The flames of Umbaru. Eastern shores of Umbaru, dawn. Dawn painted the sky in ribbons of scarlet and gold as 40 black-rimmed galleons slipped through the sea mist like predators. Their sails bore no heraldry save one, a red dragon coiled around a ring of flame, its wings outstretched, rising from a bed of black and red fire on a gold field, the banner of House Draceryos, a sigil that now flew high above the eastern waves of Umbaru. Lord Mary's Costagar stood at the prow of a Valyrian man-o'-war ship, Stormborn, the wind brushing silver-gold strands from his face, his violet eyes narrowing on the distant shore. Jungle ridges loomed like green daggers, veiled by thick coastal fog. The cliffs were jagged, the beaches narrow, but there were gaps between the cliffs, places where ships could strike. He turned to the hornmaster and raised 2 fingers. No sound. Signal the landing with the flags only, he said in clipped High Valyrian. Let the Summer Islanders learn how swift and silent our strikes are. The orders rippled through the ships. Flags lifted, and ropes unfurled. One by one, the galleons turned and approached the shallow inlets, longboats lowered with dragon guards packed within. Dragon hunters perched on the sterns with bows already drawn, scanning the treeline. The enemy was hidden, but not idle. As soon as boots touched wet sand, the jungle screamed. War cries in the native tongue. Painted warriors burst from the tree line, barrequested, wielding curved bronze, bone spears, and hide shields emblazoned with animal sigils. There were no banners, no chain of command, only the chaos of splintered tribes that ruled this part of Umbaru. The east belonged to no prince, only to chiefs who could hold their hills. But they were not prepared for Valyria. Shields. Costagar roared as he stepped from his longboat, sword already drawn. The dragon guards locked their dark-forged steel together in a tight crescent. The first wave of natives struck the wall and bounced back, spears splintering against armor from the lands of the long summer. Forward. He barked. Step. And kill. Arrows hissed from the rear, dragon hunters loosing fletched death into the jungle. Screams rose above the crashing waves. Behind the formation, fire sparked. 4 flamecallers, their robes marked with curling red glyphs, stepped from the rear ranks. At their flanks, 14 fire mages, moved with ritual precision. They did not charge. They did not shout. The flamecallers extended one hand, their fingers carved with emberink runes, while the other holds a fire staff, a staff made of dark-forged steel with runes etched on it, its head crowned by a swirling cage of dark, flamma-edged blades that cradled a floating ember heart of living fire. Heat shimmered in the salt air as a sudden line of fire exploded across the tree line. Vines curled, dried, and ignited. Smoke rose in an angry column. Warriors stumbled out of the trees screaming, some burning, others coughing. 2 dragon guards caught fire in the chaos. A blood mage rushed forward, slicing her palm with a dagger and chanting through clenched teeth. She placed her bleeding hand to their scorched skin, the wounds started to heal and sealed within moments. Hold the ridge. Lord Mary's Kostagar shouted as his blade met a tribal captain in single combat. The man moved fast, his tattoos gleaming with oil. But Valyrian steel caught him midspin, slicing through his defense. Blood soaked the sand. The Valyrians pushed higher. By midday, they had claimed a hill fort, a stone enclosure wrapped with spears and flags, and set the Draceryos banner atop its walls. Flamecallers conjured a circle of fire toward the lower path. Kostagar stood upon the highest outcrop, watching new ships arrive with fresh waves of dragon guards. Here, he told the architects behind him, the eastern fort shall be built. Wait for one of the dragons to arrive. Make it strong. Make it visible. Let every tribe that still hides in the trees know that Umbaru now belongs to Valyria. Western inlet of Umbaru, mid-morning. The jungle breathed fire when Azantius descended. His shadow darkened half the inlet, his wings fanning out like the sails. Trees bent. Sand scattered. The great dragon landed near a cliff ledge where galleons had just begun offloading troops. His scales shimmered with molten hues, eyes burning like twin suns. Upon his back sat Balthagar Draceryos, armored, silent, cloaked in the black and gold of Draceryos. As he stepped down, Aenor Selneros and Egalon Dalrios approached, each bowing. The beach is ours, Aenor reported. But the interior is a web of paths. Tribes hide in the vines, use the trees like walls. They'll use the terrain. Ambushes, Egalon added. Even the scouts report movement and disappearances. Let them come, Balthagar said calmly. We'll remind them that our flames burn hot. He turned to the 2 flamecallers and 8 fire mages with them. Follow the dragon guards. When the moment strikes, you will burn the paths before they can reach us. The mages bowed low. They advanced inland, step by step, the jungle closing around them. Dragon guards marched in tight formation. Dragon hunters scanned the canopy. Dragon scouts moved ahead in pairs, bows, daggers, and short blades ready. Then, the trees screamed. Dozens of native warriors dropped from above, blades swinging. The dragon guards held fast. Fire mages called out in unison, their fire staffs glowing, and the 2 flamecallers struck together, and unlike the fire mages, their staffs is made of Valyrian steel. A rolling firestorm burst forward, catching the ambushers in a fiery surge. It wasn't vast, but it was enough. The trees lit up. Cries echoed. Smoke swallowed the attackers. Among the chaos, a tribal chieftain charged toward the command flank, tall, barrechested, inked with crimson dyes and scars of a dozen battles. His twin axes moved like dancing blades. Aenor Selneros stepped forward. Their duel was swift and brutal, blade against axe, step against strike. The chieftain fought with strength, but Aenor with honed brutality. One sidestep, one reversal, and the commander's Valyrian steel blade cut through bone. The army paused, then raised their fists, dragon guards, dragon hunters, and dragon scouts alike, in salute to Aenor's prowess. Good, you have earned their respect, Balthagar said simply. A wooden cliff fort rose from the rocks ahead, its towers crowned in smoke and fire, a last stand. Azantius shrieked from above. Balthagar gave no command. For the great dragon obeyed the instinctual connection with its rider. Flames erupted in a cone of molten ruin. The fort crumbled and burned beneath the blaze. Smoke and ash swirled over the jungle, and when the inferno faded, only ash and molten stone remained. Balthagar raised his hand, pointing toward the ridge above. There, he said, is where we will raise the western fort. Central Umbaru, the shrine and plateau, nightfall. They called it the Great Circle of the Sun and Moon, a stonering grove atop a central plateau, high above the twin coasts. Tribes claimed it sacred, a neutral meeting ground untouched by blood. Tonight, it bled. 11 tribal warlords stood in half-circle, armed and arrayed in feathered cloaks and carved bone armor. Behind them, dozens more warriors watched in tight formation. And from above, shadow fell. Azantius descended upon the circle like a storm. The tribal warriors fell to their knees as wind and fire crashed into the grove. The great beast landed with one claw crushing part of the stone ring. Balthagar stood alone upon his back. No soldier accompanied him. Eyes locked on the tribal leaders, he descended in silence. He walked between the tribal warlords. None moved. None spoke. You are the last, he said in the Summer Islander tongue, sharpened by Valyrian tone. You stand upon land that no longer remembers your names. Your gods do not answer. Your spears are broken. He stepped to the center. Kneel, he commanded, or join your ancestors. Some fell to their knees, out of fear. 2 warlords turned to run. Azantius opened his jaws, and flame consumed the path behind them. It was over. The shrine was not desecrated. Balthagar approached the center and touched the standing stone, placing his palm upon it. Let this no longer be a place of your gods, he said. Let it be the beacon of flame, for those who remember Valyria, for those who will know of its power. He summoned the fire. The stone lit, not by spell, but by true magic, blood and fire. It glowed with the colors of the Draceryos sigil, a dark crimson gold. 2 days later, northern coastline of Umbaru, morning. After 2 days, the swift conquest of Umbaru sent shockwaves through the nearby islands. Umbaru had always been known for its chaos, with endless wars fought for tribal dominance. Now, House Draceryos flew its banners above the ruins. Valyria had come for Umbaru, and claimed it wholly. By morning of the 2nd day, all resistance was broken. Order was swiftly established, just like the conquest had been. 3 Valyrian forts were already being prepared, one in the east, one in the west, and one at the center of Umbaru, atop its mountains range. The banners of Draceryos flew proudly and high on those locations. Balthagar stood atop a central plateau, overlooking the fleet assembling at the northern coastline. Lord Kostagar stood beside him, armor scraped from war. No leaders left. No would-be princes, Lord Marys murmured. Only husks remain, tribes without teeth. Balthagar's gaze turned northward, toward the sea. They will not have long to lick their wounds, he said. The people of the tall trees shall see our sails, and know the promise of Dakar Draceryos is soon to be fulfilled. They have always yearned for Valyria, for its strength, for its glory, and they shall have it soon. Azantius lifted his wings, and the ships turned north towards the next conquest. 1 comments 0 vote.